Every day the world loses legends, icons whose lives shaped our culture, our memories, our hearts. From actors to musicians, pioneers to visionaries, their stories deserve to be remembered and celebrated. Welcome back. Here we honor the lives, achievements, and legacies of those who passed, today keeping their memory alive for generations to come. The news arrived quietly, almost like a scene from one of the films that made him famous. In the early hours of the morning, fans across Europe and America began sharing the same heartbreaking message. Jack Taylor, the actor whose face became deeply connected to mystery and horror cinema, had passed away. For many longtime film lovers, it felt like the closing of a strange and unforgettable chapter in movie history. In dark theaters and late-night television broadcasts, Jack Taylor had once appeared like a shadow from another world. His calm voice, sharp features, and mysterious screen presence made him impossible to forget. But behind those performances was a man who had traveled far from home in search of something bigger than Hollywood could offer him. Born as George Brown Randall in Oregon, his journey began far away from the castles, haunted mansions, and eerie streets that would later define his career. Few people could have imagined that the young American would one day become one of the most recognizable faces in European cult cinema. Yet somewhere along the way, Jack Taylor found a place where he truly belonged. As tributes continued to appear online, many fans remembered the unusual path he had taken. Unlike many actors of his time, he did not become famous through major Hollywood studios or blockbuster productions. Instead, he built his legacy inside a world of low-budget horror films, psychological thrillers, and experimental cinema that often existed far outside the mainstream. That world changed forever when he crossed paths with Spanish filmmaker Jesús Franco. Their collaboration would become legendary among cult film audiences. Franco was known for creating strange, dreamlike films filled with horror, suspense, and surreal imagery. Jack Taylor quickly became one of his most trusted actors. Together, they created stories that audiences either deeply admired or struggled to understand. But even critics who questioned the films often admitted one thing: Taylor's presence on screen carried a quiet intensity that pulled viewers into every scene. One former collaborator once said, "Jack never needed to raise his voice to command attention. The camera simply loved him." During the 1970s and 1980s, his face appeared in countless European genre films. Some were dark vampire stories. Others explored crime, fear, or psychological obsession. The productions were often small, and the filming conditions were not always easy. Yet Taylor continued working with patience and professionalism, earning deep respect from directors and fellow actors alike. Fans especially admired how naturally he fit into the atmosphere of European horror cinema. He seemed comfortable inside its shadows. Comfortable with silence. Comfortable with mystery. But away from the cameras, those who knew him described a very different man. Friends often spoke about his intelligence, humor, and kindness. Despite becoming a cult icon, he rarely behaved like a celebrity. In interviews, he appeared thoughtful and surprisingly humble about his career. He understood that his films were not always widely accepted during their original release. Still, he appreciated the loyal audience that slowly grew around them over the years. As younger generations discovered classic horror cinema through streaming services and film festivals, Jack Taylor's work found new life. Fans who had never experienced European exploitation cinema suddenly became fascinated by the strange beauty of those old films. And once again, Taylor's performances stood at the center of that discovery. Film historian Antonio Lazaro once said, "Jack Taylor helped give European horror an international face. He connected different worlds of cinema together." In recent years, convention appearances and retrospective screenings allowed him to reconnect with admirers who had followed his work for decades. Many were surprised by how warm and approachable he remained. Some fans traveled across countries simply to meet him for a few moments and thank him for the memories his films had given them. Now those memories feel even heavier. Across social media, tributes continue to pour in from actors, directors, and longtime viewers. One fan wrote, "His films felt like dreams you could never fully explain." Another simply posted, "A true gentleman of cult cinema." And perhaps that is the legacy Jack Taylor leaves behind. Not just the films themselves, but the atmosphere they created. The feeling of stepping into another world for a short time. A world filled with mystery, danger, beauty, and fear. For generations of cult film fans, his performances became part of late-night movie traditions, unforgettable conversations and lifelong memories shared between friends. Even now, somewhere in an old theater or a quiet living room, one of those films will begin again. The screen will fade to black. And once more Jack Taylor's unforgettable presence will emerge from the shadows. For years his voice arrived before the movie even began. In newspaper columns, television studios and crowded talk shows across America, Rex Reed became one of the most familiar faces in entertainment journalism. Long before social media critics and online reviews, audiences waited to hear what Rex Reed thought about Hollywood's newest stars and films. Now, as tributes reflect on his long career, many people are remembering a man who somehow became just as famous as the celebrities he reviewed. In the golden age of American talk shows, Rex Reed stood out immediately. His sharp opinions, elegant style and confident personality made him impossible to ignore. While many critics remained hidden behind newspaper pages, Reed stepped directly into the spotlight. He was not simply writing about show business. In many ways he became part of it. But behind that fame was a young man with a deep fascination for movies and storytelling. Born in Indiana, Reed developed a love for film early in life. He admired old Hollywood stars and studied the changing world of American cinema with careful attention. By the late 1960s and early 1970s, his reviews were reaching millions of readers across the country. At a time when Hollywood itself was transforming, Rex Reed's voice became part of the national conversation. The film industry was entering a new era filled with bold directors, controversial stories and rising young actors. Audiences debated films passionately, and Reed often stood at the center of those discussions. Some readers loved his honesty. Others strongly disagreed with him. But almost everyone paid attention. One television producer once said, "Rex understood that criticism could also be entertainment." That balance helped make him unforgettable. His television appearances turned him into a cultural figure far beyond journalism. Sitting beside famous actors and comedians on late-night programs, Reed delivered opinions with confidence and humor. Sometimes he praised films warmly. Other times his criticism could feel brutally direct. Those moments often created headlines of their own. Yet even people who disliked his reviews admitted that he brought energy and personality to entertainment criticism. He understood the drama surrounding celebrity culture long before modern media fully embraced it. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, Reed became connected to some of the biggest names in Hollywood. He interviewed legendary performers, attended major premieres, and moved through the glamorous world he covered each day. For viewers at home, he seemed to exist somewhere between journalist and celebrity himself. But fame also came with criticism. Over the years, some of his comments sparked controversy and public debate. His style was often direct and not everyone appreciated his approach. Still, Reed rarely softened his opinions to satisfy public pressure. Whether audiences agreed with him or not, he remained committed to speaking honestly about the films and personalities he covered. That honesty became part of his identity. Friends and colleagues often described him as intelligent, deeply knowledgeable about cinema, and surprisingly thoughtful away from the cameras. Beneath the sharp public image was someone who genuinely cared about the art of filmmaking and the history of Hollywood itself. Film writer Leonard Maltin once remarked, "Rex Reed belonged to an era when critics shaped the cultural conversation in a very powerful way." As decades passed, the media world changed dramatically. Newspapers lost influence. Television evolved. Online voices replaced many traditional critics. But Reed's name remained connected to a unique period in American entertainment history, a time when critics themselves could become household names. For many viewers, his presence represented more than movie reviews. He reflected an entire era of celebrity culture, glamorous premieres, and televised entertainment debates that once defined American media. Today, longtime fans continue sharing memories of seeing him on television or reading his latest column in Sunday newspapers. Some remember agreeing with every review. Others remember arguing passionately against him. But that emotional reaction was part of what made Rex Reed matter for so many years. His voice helped shape how audiences talked about movies, fame, and Hollywood itself. And even now, as the lights fade on another unforgettable media figure, the conversations he started continue echoing through film culture. Somewhere tonight, an old interview clip may appear again on a television screen. A familiar voice will return, Sharp, confident, unmistakable. And for a brief moment, the golden age of entertainment criticism will feel alive once more. The stadium lights still glowed over Atlanta long after the final game had ended. Fans slowly walked through the quiet parking lots, carrying memories that stretched back decades. For many of them, the name Bobby Cox was never just connected to baseball victories. It represented stability, leadership, and an era that changed the history of the Atlanta Braves forever. As tributes continue to honor his remarkable life and career, many former players are speaking not only about the championships, but about the man himself. The calm figure standing near the dugout steps. The manager who defended his players without hesitation. The leader who quietly built one of baseball's greatest dynasties. Long before the Braves became a dominant force, the organization faced difficult years and uncertain seasons. But Bobby Cox saw something others did not yet fully recognize. He believed the team could become special through patience, discipline, and trust in young talent. That belief would slowly transform an entire franchise. Born in Oklahoma, Cox played professional baseball before eventually moving into coaching and management. Those who knew him early often described him as focused, steady, and deeply committed to the game. He was not the loudest personality in baseball, and he rarely searched for attention. Instead, he let his work speak for him. When he returned to Atlanta as manager in 1990, few people could have predicted what would happen next. Over the following years, the Braves became one of the most successful teams in Major League Baseball. Season after season, the organization captured division titles with remarkable consistency. The team's pitching staff became legendary, and the Braves turned into regular contenders deep into October. For fans in Atlanta, it felt like watching a baseball empire rise in real time. One former player once said, "When Bobby believed in you, it changed your confidence completely." That loyalty became one of the defining parts of his leadership style. Players trusted him because they knew he would protect them publicly, even during difficult moments. Inside the clubhouse, Cox created a culture built on accountability, professionalism, and respect. At times, his passion became famous in another way. Bobby Cox was ejected from games more than any manager in Major League Baseball history. But many players saw those moments as proof of how fiercely he defended his team. Fans often cheered loudly when he argued with umpires, knowing he was standing up for the players beside him. Yet behind that fiery competitiveness was a calm and thoughtful leader who understood people as much as he understood baseball. The greatest reward of his career came in 1995, when the Braves captured the World Series championship. After years of playoff battles and heartbreak, Atlanta finally stood at the top of baseball. For many longtime fans, the victory felt deeply emotional because it represented years of patience and dedication under Cox's leadership. But perhaps his greatest achievement was not a single championship. It was the consistency. Year after year, the Braves remained contenders in one of the toughest eras in baseball history. Younger players developed into stars under his guidance, while veterans respected the stability he brought to the organization. Across generations of fans, Bobby Cox became connected to memories shared between fathers, sons, families, and entire communities throughout the South. Hall of Fame pitcher Tom Glavine once said, "He treated players like men first and athletes second." As news of remembrance spreads through the baseball world, tributes continue arriving from former players, coaches, broadcasters, and fans. Many describe him not only as a brilliant manager, but as one of the most respected figures the sport has ever known. Today, outside the ballpark, he helped transform into a symbol of winning baseball. His legacy still feels alive. The banners remain. The memories remain. And somewhere in Atlanta, countless fans can still picture him leaning calmly against the dugout railing, watching the game he loved so deeply. For an entire generation of baseball fans, Bobby Cox was more than a manager. He was the steady heartbeat of a dynasty.